Hello there, and welcome to my little arty corner here on YouTube. It's Thursday the 3rd of March. It's wet and grey out, and it feels quite cold. It's not as cold as it feels, but there's no sunshine, so damp and yeah. So today's a fine day for staying indoors, creating. I say that nearly every day. Every day is a fine day for staying indoors and creating, though I know I need to get out and about a bit more, and slowly and gently I'll get there. But a large part of my day, it's now about nearly 2:30 in the afternoon. A lot of my day's been spent sorting out the colouring templates, colouring pages for this week's freebies, gifts to the Angela Porter's Colouring Book Fans Facebook group, and which is what I do on a Thursday. It's my Thursday routine. And I just thought it'd be quite nice to come and spend some time here. I'm feeling a bit, strange today. I'm tired, I think, even though I slept-ish. But, let's get on to it. So you saw this drawing up to around these little bits here yesterday. It's grown. It's because I woke up at stupid o'clock in the night and spent a couple of hours drawing before I went back to sleep this morning. And what I did yesterday was where you can see these indigo blue, these blue colours. I thought I'm going to have a go with some Graffy Tint pencils and a slightly damp brush and see what happens on this paper. And this paper actually takes it quite nicely. It gives a nice texture to the colour as well, which, is a bonus as far as I'm concerned. So, I thought it'd be nice if you could come and join me as I add colour, perhaps go in and add some shadow or highlights to these and just see where this goes. It gives me a break from working digitally because I did an awful lot yesterday, and sometimes I just need that kind of step away from it. This is getting a bit wet, which is going to be a test of this paper. It's meant for dry media, but like most papers, well, I say most papers, not necessarily printer paper, but there are many papers that you can use a slightly damp brush on just to get, to activate colours and to get them working without, getting the paper sopping wet. I would say I am really quite enjoying using this paper. And yeah, I don't go through and decide which sections I'm going to do in one colour and then which in another. I just let this one grow organically and intuitively. I was looking earlier as I was beginning to doze off to sleep again, because sometimes I need something to listen to or to vaguely watch, to take my mind off my thoughts, which can race at stupid o'clock in the morning, about nothing often. But I was looking at neurographic art. Have any of you seen that? It's not dissimilar to the kind of art that I create in some ways, but it's got an interesting, sort of like use of it. It's a bit like Zentangle, where Zentangle you've got a set of, I suppose, almost like rules or instructions or suggestions would be a nice way of saying it, and limits placed on the artwork that's done, so it could be called a Zentangle, artwork. You get Zentangle inspired, which is kind of what a lot of mine is. But then neurographic art takes another kind of look at this. The focus is on using this form of art to process troubling thoughts or things that you need to work on in life. But the results can be really quite lovely. And I think that, I know that art therapy is really, really useful. After working with an art therapist on some of the colouring books, the Colour Me series of books, I certainly do know that that is the case. God blimey, look at the sharpness of that. I wonder what sharpener I used for that one. I think I know. So it's got an interesting idea behind it. So I'll put it out here. If you want me to have a bigger look at it and see if I can put something in my own way about it. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of really good tutorials out there about it, but I'm sort of intrigued to have a go, kind of. But I know that it's going to end up with me going, oh yeah, and it'll end up being subsumed into my usual kind of art. That's interesting, because I thought these bits on the side had actually dried, but this colour has bled into them. That's an interesting thing. I can make use of that, so I'm happy with that. Because these unexpected things to do with colour are quite fun. This colour is what will add the dimension to these forms here, which I've drawn in a very flat manner. But there are layers here, and layers of things, so must remember to give time for things to dry if I'm going to do this on this paper. It is lovely. I don't know what you think about the drawing, what you think it is. You know, it's turned into some really weird kind of cityscape, which actually I really enjoyed doing. I have my moments, it has to be said. Okay, let's have a look. Let's add some colour to these here. I think these triangles here need to be 2 different colours. So I'm starting with this, which is Port, which is a lovely red. And bear in mind that these colours will look a little bit different to usual because this paper is quite creamy in colour. And that's an unusual thing for me, because I like usually work on quite white paper. It's creamier than the Canson Imagine, which is quite a creamy colour as well. Right, so those little bits there will need to be left to dry. I think I might pop some in here. Really want a dark shadow there, perhaps a dark shadow down the bottom. Some colour in between. These could become a favourite kind of sketchbook of mine. They're designed for sketching and drafting work, but I quite like the way the ink feathers a little bit on these. I haven't tried my fountain pens yet. Did I say yet? Not yet, but I may do. So it is just a funny kind of day here, really. I don't know why my mood's the way it is. It may be something to do with the gloomy weather, but I'm not really feeling like I want to jump up and click my heels together, as it were. It's I'm okay. I'm content enough, so there's nothing to worry about. But perhaps the strain and stress of the last couple of days in some ways has taken its toll. Because of course, is it Monday or Tuesday? Monday, I had a sudden suggestion that a friend visits, and as much as I love my friends, and I do very much, but it was really stressful, and I enjoyed the company, the conversation. It's something that I've had very little of in the last couple of years. You know, most probably 2 or 3 times, as in person. And just having that time to share tea and coffee and a donut, as it happens. It was really lovely, but it left me absolutely exhausted. In a good way. But I could tell how stressed I'd been and were, anxious about this, because don't easily let people into my home in the first place. And secondly, it's the first time in over 2 years, apart from one workman anybody's been inside my house. So a furious tidying up and cleaning and so on had to be done before then, because I have to make an effort because I live here and I'll leave things out when I'm using them, so things can look a bit cluttered and untidy, as it were, but I'm fine with that, you know, with me on a day-to-day basis. What I'm going to do here is I've got these that I coloured yesterday with the tinted graphite, but I'm just going to add some colour over them because I think they need it. So this graphite tint is Autumn Brown, which is a lovely kind of reddy brown once it's activated with water. You can see this browny red colour and the indigo are perhaps one of my favourite colour combinations in the graphite tint line. And I do believe the pencils are open source, which means that should I run out of these and I want any more, I'll be able to get just those without having to buy a whole set. I would have liked to have been able to use alcohol markers on this paper, but it's just not meant to be, and I'm fine with that, to be honest. I'm going to put some of this Autumn Brown next to the ports so you can see the difference in the colour. Hopefully it is much more browny, it's much more of an orangey tone. I'm also going to start to put some stripes in this roof. Da, da, da. 1, 2, 1, 2, dum, 1, 2. I think I might do that, is leave 2. Put that in, leave 2 and put that in. And then I'll get some repetition of colour along there. And I'm going to put some at the bottom of these sections. Well, that one there, because it's going to be mostly in shadow. So I think that, you know, these things, and then a friend who needed a chat on Tuesday, and that was lovely. It was on Zoom, but a lot of things to help sort out there and a lot of worries that needed to be shared, which is, again, is fine. It's what friends are for. I'm not moaning and I'm not complaining, and I'm just, you know, I suppose giving a little insight into me and my life and, you know, how things are with me. I can get very stressed and anxious in some ways, even though I know these friends well and I'm comfortable with them. Just shows how I've been all my life. I've said this before, if you've listened before. If you haven't, this will be new, but it's only through the lockdowns, the social isolation, or social distancing that we've had in the last couple of years that I've understood what it's like to live without anxiety. I knew I lived with a high level of anxiety from as far back as I can remember, but through some EMDR therapy and, you know, other forms of talking therapy, and changing my job, you know, leaving teaching, I'd got to a point where I'd actually experienced what it means to be content for the first time in my life. And I am, you know, I'm content today. I'm happy enough, but there's also a tiredness or a bit of flatness here, which may be to do with the lack of sunshine, because that really does affect me. Sunshine really, really does. Or the lack of it. I can't go out in bright sunshine because my skin has a bad reaction to it. Yeah, I know, but actually just having sunlight lifts my mood. So I'd lived all my life with this anxiety and not understood. It wasn't till I had a big burnout breakdown, whatever, several years ago now, that I understood that my mind constantly talking, and all the self-talk and the negative self-talk especially, that was keeping me up at night and was, you know, intrusive thoughts throughout the day and so on, wasn't actually healthy, and it's not what most people experience. And so I had to learn to do things in a different way, and that led me down the route of getting, well, you know, being recognised that I had complex post-traumatic stress, and to get the help and support I needed to overcome that. And this discovery that you know, that first, I can remember the very first antidepressant tablet I took, and my mind went quiet. I'd never had a quiet mind, ever. And it wasn't thinking about, big, deep ideas. It was constant self-talk and worry about what were they going to think of me? How am I going to do this? Am I being stupid? Am I being daft here? I'm worrying and fearful about things. I realised that you can still function without a mind like that. And so I rarely get minds like that. I wake up in the morning often, thanks to my time of life, my age now. And if I can't get back to sleep, my mind will start thinking about all kinds of things. I'll have ideas for art pop in my head, or I'll be thinking about what I'd like to do in the future, or I might suddenly sit up for a while and draw like I did this morning. I carried on with this drawing. But it's a different kind of busy mind, which is surprising to me as well, has to be said. And what colour's that? Trying to decide what colour I want to use. I've got greens to go here. I think I might use this one. It's a meadow, it's called, which is a lighter green, but I know I can always come back with a darker green. Beware, I'm going to sharpen the pencil before I do anything else. Well, definitely not that pencil sharpener I was using to sharpen these. I don't know where the hand roundy one goes. The one where you put it in. Pinch it, put it in the hole, let the things go, and then you got a handle on the side to wind round. I've got no idea what it's called. Rotary pencil sharpener, could be. Yeah, brain not functional. So so having a different way or different kind of relationship with my mind, or the way my mind relates to me, doesn't mean I'm free of critical self-thought. It just means that it's not the be all and end all, and I know I've got strategies now that I can use to help me not get lost in that inner chatter, that inner negative chatter, I suppose. So life's a lot different. It's a lot better for me, certainly in that way. But of course, I hadn't realised just how anxious. I knew I was anxious in crowds, or where there were lots of noisy people and so on. But it's only now I realise how anxious I am all the time, really. And when I'm outside anyway, indoors it's okay, except when people come into my house, and then it's that social anxiety kicks in, even with somebody I know and I trust. So there's another awareness there. And any kind of anxiety, stress, because it's a form of stress, hormone cortisol is produced, and cortisol wreaks havoc on your body, on your sleep patterns, and as it leaches away, it leaves behind exhaustion. And that's what I'm experiencing today, because it does take quite a few, it can take quite a while to leach away. So that's something else I learned. So it's about cortisol and stress levels and all sorts of things. So I'm a lot better. I'm a lot more resilient than I used to be, which is fantastic. But at the same time, I'm also becoming aware of things that I know, I have to plan in advance for, almost, in terms of time. Is that if I'm going to be going somewhere with a friend, or to meet friends, or I'm going to go somewhere where there's going to be people, I know I need to pop in a couple of very quiet days at home without all of this, just to give my body and my mind and everything else just that chance to recover and to become, calm and settled, and the exhaustion will wash over me. The other thing it does is it upsets my stomach terribly, and I'm well aware that this does give me problems with my digestive system. but I'm aware of it, and I know what the consequences are, and I can live with that. Said it's about managing time and my own resources. So my heart goes out to anybody who experience mental or emotional ill health. It always has done, but more so now, I suppose, because I'm very, very much aware of how it's, you know, it's that hindsight is a wonderful thing, and I'm able to see now exactly how it affected me. And I wish I'd known what I know now about what is good mental and emotional health, you know, as I was growing up or as a younger person. So it's, you know, my late 40s, early 50s, this all happened really. And I'd finished my EMDR therapy just a month before the pandemic hit the UK, really. And so to get to a position, you know, into a position where I was sort of like good enough to leave therapy was really, really fortunate for me. Because if I hadn't been that well, goodness knows what would have happened. It was probably, I actually would have been all right, because I wouldn't, you know, 2 years not having to deal with people. It's dealing with people that causes me stress and anxiety more than anything else. This new colour I'm using is called Juniper. The green one is Meadow, just in case you want to know. They're in the Graphitint range of pencils. There's only 24 colours, I believe, in the range. I don't think they've released any more. But this Juniper's really lovely. It's a pinky purpley colour. There's an aubergine in the set, which is more of a bluey purple, a royal purple, I suppose. But this one I really do like. Sometimes I wonder how on earth they get their names, because I really do not associate this colour with Juniper at all. But there we are. Everybody know. I see some very bizarre names for colours, and sometimes you think, where did this come from? So it's beginning to look quite, the colours really, I say beginning to, the colours really do bring this to life. I'm going to put some Juniper here, which wouldn't naturally be my choice of colour to put next to this, well, next to the green, but perhaps not the reddy brown. But let's have a look and see how it looks. It's a sketchbook, and if I want to, if I ever want to make use of this, I can either redraw or I can scan in and redraw digitally, which I sort of would like to do in some ways, because some of these things that I would like to be pretty vertical, they're all a bit wobbly and wonky, but then perhaps that's, you know, space city architecture. Perhaps things are meant to be a bit wobbly wonky looking, but deliberately so. Defying the rules of architecture here on the earth. Space age materials that allow things to happily go in wobbly wonky directions, perhaps. I don't know. So that green works quite nicely with that brown as well. So if you are, you know, if you do struggle with mental ill health, low moods, anxiety, there's no shame in it at all. And it's something that we don't have to put up with, really. It's about finding what works for you. You know, as soon as I recognised it was complex post-traumatic stress, I knew that I was going to have to work on the traumas in my past. And that's kind of a tough thing, because I don't actually remember them, because they happened when I was quite young, or I've blocked a lot of them out of my head. But we got there in the end. You know, I'm sure there are things I haven't dealt with that will come back to the forefront at, you know, some point in time, or maybe not. But I know what help I need should that happen, if I can't deal with that myself. So I've got amazing tools that I learnt, and I do make use of them. But I think one of the things I do when my mood is quite low is I do turn to art, and I find art really, really soothing and lovely. I am looking in my collection here because I am looking for a colour that I can use. Now my problem is that with these, sometimes the colour they say and the colour on the top gives no idea of what colour anything is. So I'm just going to pop this down here. I don't know if you can see. This one it's chestnut in colour, and that's quite a brown. The one thing I find that is missing in this set is a yellowy colour. I think that meadow is about the closest we can get to it. That, the greeny colour I've been using. There are some lovely, lovely blues and bluey greens. Oh, steel blue would be lovely. I'm going to sharpen it, so cover your ears for a mo if you don't like the sound of my pencil sharpener. This one does sound like it's cracking bones, it has to be said. Not that I know what bones being cracked sounds like particularly, but I would imagine that if bones are being cracked, this is what it will sound like. So this is steel blue. A lot of these colours look almost identical when you put the graphitint down. You wake the colours up with water, but they can be used without water. It depends what kind of, oh gosh, that's still got some of that red on there. It's okay, it'll disappear in with this. If I want more vibrant colours here, I could go with Inktense pencils, watercolour pencils, the Ecoline pens. But today I'm in the mood for muted. Or, digital art, of course. The ultimate for bright colours. Okay, so I'll leave that to dry before I put any colour on. I'm beginning to get quite a pile of colours here to use. I'll pick that steel blue up again. And let's have a look as to where we can pop it. So I'll pop some here, I think. The lovely thing about this is you don't have to be particularly precise with, really neat and tidy with the colouring, because you're going to use it almost like a dry paint that you activate and move around. But I am aware that I want to keep it quite dark in the shadowy areas, so I'm working from the lightest parts into the darkest and moving the water activated colour that way to make them as dark as I can get them. And I do want to activate all of that colour. And I'm running some down there. Now around the edge here, I wanted to keep that pretty light so that we've got a bit of reflection there. It's the way I think of shadows are two things. One is a light source. So I'm roughly thinking that there's a light over this side of my sketch pad, over here shining this way, so that things that are facing this light source will be lightest. But I'm also thinking about where things overlap and where they'll be in shadow. So here, even though this is facing towards the light source, there's something on the other side of it, so this edge would be in shadow. It's behind it, so it would, the light source is back and shining forwards a little bit perhaps. Not necessarily on the top, but even on the top you'd have a bit of shadow there, cast shadow from this other object. So always think, I try to think about that as I work. I try to think pretty logically as I work, to be honest. It doesn't always work out that way because what can I say? But I try to do this. And, just taking the time to do it can be really lovely. And this is something that I'm not in a rush to finish, and it may never get completely finished. It's in a sketchbook, it's fine. But I know I can always go back to it when I just need this quiet time. Just quiet time with something in my sketchbook to do, some drawing, some colouring, completing these. And what I do want to do with something like this is to actually create this for, you know, as if it's in the background with perhaps some terrain underneath it and plants coming over the side, so it's almost like you're looking through you know, a plant shaped or plant created window, you know. Whether I'll get round to doing something like that, but it's a thought I've had, so it may be the case that one day I will. Problem is I have too many ideas and not enough time or energy at times to actually put them all into practice, but we'll see. Excuse me. It's late winter, heading towards, you know, 21st of March, which is the spring equinox, and of course the early season tree pollen is out. And even though it's wet today, it's, you know, floating around, and it sets off my asthma a bit. But it only lasts for a couple of months, and once the apple blossoms are finished, I'm pretty much clear of it, so it won't be long. But it can be a bit of an irritation, shall we say. Let's go back to the dark indigo and add some of that. I was going to put it there, but I've got the dark indigo there already. Not that that's a major thing. I think these grids, I'm going to add some dark indigo in these here. But I think once it's dry, I'm going to come back and add some of the chestnut to give a rusty feel to it, perhaps. I'll see how I feel when they've dried. Don't want to do it when it's wet. Oh, this is going to be a pain to do. See, I love delicate little patterns, but adding colour to them is one of the banes of my life. Having said that, this is teeny tiny, but I can still get this tip of this pencil and it's no longer super sharp. So the tip of this brush is fine enough that I can make use of it. I think the centres of some of these I will be adding some metallic at some point. I'm almost positive I will. Because I just think the metallic colour will just work so nicely. That's going to need a finer brush than this one to do. So here, instead of adding more port, I'm adding the autumn brown on the other sort of like half diamond shapes, so that we get a bit of variation in colour there as well. Not a huge variation, but there is some, so it will help. And I'm making the bottom of each of these diamonds darker than the tops. So I've had to put some colour here, so I've got some colour to blend out, but it should be a lot lighter than the port that is in the others. So it should give a feeling of dimension. If I need to, I can always go back and adjust that. While I've got the indigo here, let's do some on these. I'm going to pop it right at the bottom and along there. That wouldn't be one. And these here will need something that's perhaps a little bit darker. Great. I'm just looking at the steel blue, and that steel blue is a lighter tone than the indigo, so I think I may use that for the other side here. That one will need a bit more of the indigo on it. Just doing little ones here. Because I have quite a simple approach to adding colour, because I like colour, but I quite like to keep it fairly simple in these sections and use the depth of colour, and as my shadows and shadows and highlights. Really, I know I can add highlights to a later date if I wish, with either white ink or gel pens, or something else that's white, because I can go over the top of this with coloured pencils if necessary, or white charcoal. So I use that on some of these if you watched yesterday's video. So I know I can brighten these colours up if I've been a bit too heavy-handed with them, and to bring those highlights in, so it's not a problem. It's like this big area of black here, and some of these I'll want to use either white ink or white gel pen on them down here to bring these out. Talking of down here, what colour would I like those in? I think I'll go with the steel blue. Oh, she picks up, I pick up juniper. Perhaps that was meant to be. Let's pop this right along the bottom edge. Down here, and I want a little bit up there as well. I'll leave the bits there as they need to be. And let's see how this works now. Just picking the barest, tiniest amount of colour up from the bottom before activating, and spreading that tiny bit of colour around the whole of the object before I just go back and just activate all that colour that's at the bottom. That keeps the shadow then at the bottom. I think this pen is now just that little bit too dry to work well. The brush pen, I mean. So I've just gently pressed where it says to press to release a bit more water. So I'm going to have to be conscious that it's likely to be a little bit damper than it was for these couple, the last couple going here. But I can live with that, because that gives that feeling of dimension to those. But these should be dry enough for me to add some of this brown in. Doesn't like going on this paper once it's slightly damp, which is surprising. So we'll add some there, and some here. Perhaps just let it trickle out, perhaps a little bit. Actually, they actually work nicely together. That makes me happy. And we just have a look now up to where I can add some. This is the autumn brown again. And these bits. I haven't got anything there. It's hidden behind all of these, so that's fine. So I'm going to just pick up that, and then that darkest bit I'm just going to go back with some to the end and just darken that tip a little bit, so it gives it that feeling of being folded or bent. Curved is the word I want. It's not folded, it's curved slightly, so that this end just looks like it's falling away a little bit. It's a bit further away and in the distance. And I could do with a little bit along the edge, just to add some shadow perhaps. A bit heavy-handed, but Graphitint's great because it's water soluble, it's always water reactive. The pigment part or the dye part of it is, so you can always reactivate it and move it. So there we go. So I've got some done. Spent about nearly 40 minutes with you, so not quite 40 minutes of colouring because I waffle, but it's beginning to get quite interesting, I think, and I hope you've enjoyed that, my little bit of waffle and my talk about, a little chat about mental and emotional well-being and other things, you know. And art's always good for me when I'm not quite as chipper as I would perhaps like to be. Doesn't mean I'm, you know, really down. Make that very clear, I'm not. I'm just feeling a little bit flat. It's emotional weather. Said it's it's been a couple of busy days and stressful days, and the stress hormones have finally, I think, leached away from my body, which means I'm left feeling tired for a bit. And that'll soon pass. Hopefully I'll get another good night's sleep, or I'll get a good night's sleep tonight, and we'll see how it goes. So I hope you've enjoyed that or found it interesting. I hope you found my explanation of adding colour as perhaps clumsy as it can be at times. At least you can see what I'm doing, and perhaps what I'm saying makes sense. And I hope that helps you and gives you some ideas of things you can do. These look like The Shining, don't they? Like they're quite metallic with that large area of shininess in the middle. And that's what I'm trying to get, is that feeling of shininess. But no doubt I'll return to this at some point. Friday tomorrow, so I will definitely do my best to get a video done tomorrow. I've been doing Fragment Fridays, I'm like a couple of Fridays, so I may very well have a look at a Zentangle fragment, and I'm going to pop it into this sketchbook. So this sketchbook is going to become a mixture of all kinds of things, perhaps. So we shall see. So until I see you again, please take care of yourselves, look after yourselves, and find time to be creative. So take care. Bye-bye. Bye. Hoyle.